Hi, I'd like to welcome you all to Benicia Unified School District's Governing Board meeting for January 14th, 2021. We just completed closed session and I am going to reconvene to open session at this time. Here's my trusty shell. There we go. All right, so we on 5.1 report on closed session items. And do we have anything to report? I don't think we do. So we are going to move on to 5.2 for an announcement. And was there any announcement, Dr. Young?
Nope.
Nope. Okay, moving right along. Item number 6. Dr. Moss, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight? What? Oh, this meeting is recorded for this one,
right.
That one?
Right.
For live streaming and archiving on the district YouTube channel at youtube.com/C/Benicia Unified School District for your convenience. Sorry, thank you. Okay, so number 6, Dr. Moss, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Okay, would everybody please stand? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. All right. Number 7, approval of the agenda. Do I have a first to approve the agenda?
I'll move to approve the agenda as written.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Awesome, you guys. Thank you so much. We are moving on to highlights, which there are.
Sherry, you need to
take a vote on the approval. Okay, it's a roll call vote? It's not a roll call vote. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, seeing none, the motion carries. The approval of the agenda, or sorry, we just did that, the highlight, and there are none as far as I see. So we're going to move on to item number 9, reports. First up are our student reports for 9.1, and I want to welcome 2 of our students here with us today, Michaela and Madison. Michaela, do you want to go first? Would that be okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, awesome.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
I'm actually talking about the things upcoming, and then Maddie will be talking about the things we've done so far this month.
Perfect.
So, as you know, first semester just ended, so we are going into our second semester. We've had, I think, about 60 seniors graduate. They chose early graduation. So that was really cool. The teacher sent out a video. I didn't watch it just because I didn't graduate early, so debate on that. But we also have Adopt a Senior, which is going to be next week. The students will be getting their gifts, I believe, on Wednesday. And then during that, they're also having textbook pickup. So all of our new classes, if you do have new textbooks, we'll be picking up Tuesday through Friday. And then we're hoping for senior sweatshirts around late January or early February. We just got a number when we got back from break. So the company we're working with is working on them right now. And then as far as we have an elective fair coming up, but that's not until February 10th. So that's a little far from now, but we're working on election committees for the upcoming leadership class. The seniors are doing that. And then this is just further in. We're doing March Madness in the last week of March, and then Multicultural Week. We're still trying to figure out the gist of those things, of course, concerning stay-at-home orders. So we'll most likely those will be videos and just interacting with students virtually. And then we had a talent show planned for later January, but concerning the incident that happened over break with one of the 8th graders that passed away. We thought it would be best to take a step back and do something more towards mental health and towards for the students, not just to entertain, but to talk to them. So we're working on that right now, trying to figure out mental health things. We're collaborating with the Kyle Highland Foundation and I think we're gonna open Zooms with them. Maybe some Instagram lives where the students are like having a questionnaire with them. So we're trying to figure out all the gist with that and communicating with them. We have a student liaison, communicating with her right now. Ongoing things, we have the Panther podcast still. I don't know if you guys know that we do have that. It's on Spotify. The rally commissioners are hosting that. And yeah, some students are getting early application acceptances for seniors. That's pretty cool. I know Maddie has gotten a few. I've gotten a few as well. So
Wow.
it's really cool to see that. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have for upcoming things.
Thank you, Michaela. That's a lot of information. That's good information. Exciting to hear. And congratulations to all those students that graduated early. So that's also bravo. Okay, Madison, you're up.
Hello, everyone. As she said, my name is Madison Burrow again, and I'm here to talk about our past events. Sorry if there's a noise in the background. So in December, before we went on break, we had a holiday rally and a holiday spirit week. So our holiday rally was virtual, of course, and people enjoyed that. We had some teachers in there. We had Miss Kay in there doing a game of unboxing with hand mittens, and that was pretty funny to watch. And then our spirit week consisted of a PJ day, favorite recipe day, your favorite holiday decoration, and your New Year's resolution. So we had a couple of participants in that, and that was fun. And we all posted on social media, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter. And then January, we have an upcoming video coming out to all of our teachers to appreciate our teachers. So us leadership students have gotten together, some of the student body, and we all put a video together, just appreciating our teachers for all the hard work. We know that this time right now, it's not only hard for the students, but especially in a virtual environment for a teacher. And I know that some students don't recognize all the behind the scenes work that goes into them teaching us and getting up every morning to teach us. So we just wanted to send them a little thank you video and for all their hard work. And then we also did a wellness week. We just ended our wellness week, and that consisted of watching movies, a yoga class with Miss Sanchez, and then today we actually shared on social media our favorite study habit. So those are the past events that we've done, and they've been pretty fun. And we've gotten participation, just not as much as we wanted to have, but it's still participation. We can't. It's a virtual environment, so yeah.
Well, Madison, thank you so much. I hope we get to see a copy of the video that you're doing for our teachers, because they do work really hard, and we do appreciate them. But girls, thank you so much. You're welcome to leave if you would like to at this point, because I know there's homework and all that kind of good stuff. So thank you for being here. We appreciate it that you are taking the time out of your evening for us. Thank you. 9.2, our next item is the superintendent's report. Dr. Young.
Yeah, good evening, everybody, board, team, and everybody had an opportunity who's tuning in tonight. Like the students said, just like to thank, all staff and teachers and everybody doing the hard work and hanging in there with the kids. Obviously we greatly appreciate that as we continue to endure. We've got some good, interesting agenda items tonight. Two of them I think are of particular interest to certainly all of the educational staff and the community and students about our learning plans moving forward and timelines, et cetera. So I know people are real interested in that. I wanted to say something real quick too. I was thinking about Martin Luther King Day coming up, and it's upon us. And I was taking the time, and I just encourage people to take the time, if you can, to re-listen to that speech. Every time I listen to it, it gives me goosebumps. It's one of the most powerful speeches I think I've ever heard. And I took the opportunity, as I try to do every year, to actually read through as he's talking. I'm looking at the text, and when I was doing it last time, I was thinking, what are these primary themes, and are these themes are certainly still relevant to us today as a society and as a district, as we continue to work on equity, inclusion, and opportunity. What I was struck when I was listening to it about his call for urgency, and that the really needing to get after the challenging issues in our country around race. And I was also walking away from these powerful messages of hope, profoundly hope, and the opportunity for unity for everybody in the United States to be together, to walk forward hand in hand, arm in arm, to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness together. So I just want to encourage people to take the time. He's one of our seminal American leaders and thinkers. And every year we take this time to pause and reflect on his words that were so powerful then and incredibly relevant now. So please take the time to do that if you can. And switching to something a little less emotional for me, I'd like to I have a thank you to First Five Solano and the Solano County Office of Education and the Solano County Library for the donation of 300 backpacks. I think this is great. Dr. Beatson told me about this earlier in the week. These backpacks will be distributed to our youngest learners at each elementary school. So I just wanted to point that out. So thank you to that group. So that's it from you, Superintendent.
Thank you so much, Dr. Young. We'll move on to board reports 9.3. Do any of the board members have anything to share since last month?
I do.
Dr. Moss?
Yeah, I wanted to share that I was able to attend our Solano County. It was our Solano County School Boards Association. So it's actually representatives from all of the school boards throughout the county, and we come together. We meet to discuss the issues that are happening. And I'm happy to announce that we have a training that's going to be coming up starting in March. And so this training is around equity and to be able to address the disparities, of course, that's happening in education. That's really always been a part of education. And so we have a presenter, Nicole Anderson, who's going to be sharing information, taking us through some training. And this is going to be open to our elected officials. It's going to be open to whether it be city council, school board, and then I believe we're looking at inviting other members of the community, particularly some of our staff at our school. So once the flyer is available, I'll be sure to share it so that everybody has an opportunity to be able to sign up. And then the other thing, I just wanted to say thank you because I was able to attend an African American Parent Network meeting that was led by Dr. Beatson. And I believe she'll talk about it a little bit later, but I did have the opportunity to attend. I did appreciate being a part of that discussion. And then just kind of looking at some of the more disparities that we know that we're facing. And I just also want to say that I appreciate you taking the lead on that work because it is vitally important. And it's something that we have to address it and just find ways to be able to come together and do the things that we need to do on behalf of all of our students. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you, Dr. Moss. Those are both things that are very important to all of us, and I'm looking forward to participating. I'm sure some of our other board members will do so as well. Anybody else have anything? Diane Ferrucci, Ms. Ferrucci.
Thank you, President Zeta. Anyways, I just wanted to share, and I'll give a little bit more of the meat of the meeting that I attended at one of our next topics, because it is on our topic as we move forward. But I had the privilege of sitting in on the 2 phone calls again this week. I sat in on the county COVID conversation, as well as sitting in on the town hall meeting by Senator Dodd. So some interesting things to share a little bit later. They talked about the vaccine. One of the really good things is they're dropping the age requirement on the vaccine. So I think that's going to be amazing. And they'll be going 65 and over plus their special groups, which are now in the next tier, which includes essential workers, our teachers. There were grocery clerks, agricultural workers. There were 4 or 5 other groups as well, and also people that have compromised immune systems. So that is also opening up, and there's going to be 3 veins with which you could get your shots. You can get them through county public health. If you're a Kaiser Permanente member, you will be able to get your shots through Kaiser, or if you're a Sutter member of Sutter Health, you will be getting them that way. So they'll be distributing them in our county in 3 ways. So that was good to hear finally.
It was good news. It was interesting to be on that phone call as well. Thank you, Mrs. Ferrucci. Anybody else have anything to share? All right. I'm going to move on to our next item. Item number 10, comments from members of the public. Public comment. Members of the public may submit comments on the agenda and any item within the jurisdiction of the school district in the following manner for meetings during shelter-in-place executive order via a Google form on this link. And there's a link attached, and I think that's on our website. And it will be open to the public from 6 to 7 p.m. on the day of the meeting. The governing board allows speakers to speak at regular meetings on agendized and non-agendized matters under public comment. Comments are limited to no more than 3 minutes per speaker. By law, no action may be taken on any item raised during the public comment periods, and matters may be referred to staff for placement on a future agenda of the governing board. So with that said, Dr. Moss and myself are going to be reading public comments this evening, and I'm just going to go to my list. It is lengthy, but we've got this. Okay, so the first letter I have here is from Laura Cohen, and she's referring to 12.1, which is equity and opportunity update. I would like to start by expressing my deepest gratitude for the incredible and important work that Jessica Garcia, our mental health coordinator, and her colleagues are doing for our children and their families, especially around the devastating loss of our 8th grade student, Gabe Trimboli. Jessica, we appreciate your support, dedication, resources, and the commitment to our children. I would also like to acknowledge the district's efforts towards starting the process of engaging the community in important conversations surrounding the development of creating meaningful, equitable objectives with the intent to implement. However, the imperative and urgent need to identify these objectives and take actionable steps towards making our BUSD schools more equitable for our children of color and for our children impacted by poverty has not yet been put into action. I believe that it is the responsibility of white people, not just to say that they don't agree with racism, but to actively work against it. BUSD leadership has not yet followed through with actionable steps towards making our schools anti-racist. Our leadership has not yet stood up and voiced that Black Lives Matter and that they value all members of their community. With every day of silence and inaction that goes by, I fear our leadership is failing to represent and include our children of color and our children who have been impacted by poverty. As a parent of this community, given the racist climate we are currently in right now, this silence enables racism. It creates an assumption of consent in the minds of both racists and victims, and therefore perpetuates inequality. As a parent, I am urging our school board and our school district leadership to share their plan to address systemic racism in our school system and to outline the concrete steps you will be taking to include the mental health and well-being of our students of color and our students who have been impacted by poverty. I stand together with other parents, teachers, and community members to know what anti-racist trainings you will be seeking out as majorly white district leaders, and for our white teachers to learn how to support our children of color and our children who are impacted by poverty within our school community. Equity and inclusion is not about politics. That is a narrative that is pushed forward in order to undermine our efforts to share power with disenfranchised and marginalized people. It is a narrative that maintains white power and privilege. We want our children of color and our children who have been impacted by poverty to feel supported, empowered, to have a sense of belonging, and have their academic needs met. How long is it okay to wait until part of our community that their needs are not important? How long can we continue to tell our community that only some of them deserve respect and equity? The time is now. We can't do that. We can't let this go until action steps and concrete plans are shared and implemented with the BUSD community. I want to thank you, Laura Cohen, for your letter.
All right, and I have the next one. This is for item 12.1, and this is from Krista Heredia. I'm a parent of 2 who attend Robert Simple Elementary. I want to bring to your attention my concern that the school district has not done enough to address racial inequity in our schools. Declaring your commitment to equal opportunity for all individuals in education does not go far enough. What we need is for you to acknowledge and affirm that Black lives matter. Without specific acknowledgement that Black families within BUSD have at times been treated differently because of their race, any efforts made to set goals for an equitable future are essentially half measures. It is my understanding that the board consulted with the African American Parent Group and plans tonight to present goals for equity work to be done in BUSD. I have so many questions about this process. Who formed this parent group? What is this parent group empowered to do? Have board members spent time listening to the personal experiences of African American families who participate in this group? I mean, really listen to how they and their children navigate a school system that is predominantly made up of white teachers and white administrators. Are the goals being presented tonight driven by really hearing those experiences, and are the goals supported by our African American families? If the first and most urgent step is not to invest in anti-racist learning for all BUSD staff, then this equity work is futile and will never go far enough. I know there is already a large group of BUSD teachers who meet this on their own time to do anti-racist learning. I'm also aware that there is a sentiment from the BUSD staff that this kind of training is not necessary because they have not personally witnessed racism in their sphere. I would argue that these staffers are blinded by their own privilege and are the ones who need it the most. Anti-racist training for all BUSD staff should be a top priority and a standard going forward. Our nation is at a pivotal moment in history, at a pivotal moment in acknowledging the deep-seated effects of systemic racism. Denial will no longer be tolerable or sustainable. Thanks to the efforts of the Benicia Black Lives Matter group, our city will soon have its first equity and diversity manager. Mayor Steve Young has publicly declared that Black Lives Matter. I stand together with other parents, teachers, and community members asking to know what anti-racist trainings you, our BUSD school board, will be seeking out as the majority white district leaders and for white teachers to learn how to support our Black students. For the record, I am white, Latina mother. We moved to Benicia in 2009 when our eldest son was entering the 6th grade. He went on to attend BMS and BHS. With our two youngest sons, our tenure at Robert Simple so far has been 5 years. In all that time, the only Black teacher or administrator my children have experienced is my eldest son's middle school PE teacher for the 1 school year. Otherwise, all of our teachers and administrators have been white. This fact has always concerned me. Should we be talking about possible discrimination in BUSD hiring practices? Yes. Should we be talking about the importance of representation in school leadership positions? Yes. Should we be talking about overhauling curriculum to reflect historical truth rather than our current curriculum that silenced the ugly racist truth? Yes. But these conversations, yes. Okay, so can I finish? I think I have a little bit left. You may stop or?
No, go ahead and finish, Dr. Mack.
Okay, all right. All right, where was I here?
You're almost done.
Okay, so yes, we should be talking about overhauling curriculum to reflect historical truth rather than our current curriculum that silences the ugly racist truths. Yes, but these conversations will not be led to heal change unless our leadership and staff are equipped with anti-racist learning. Therefore, I implore you to make anti-racist training a priority now. I also implore you to seek partnership with those in our community who are already doing the work. The time is now for action steps. Important history is in the making. This is our opportunity to be on the right side of it. Thank you.
Okay, next item is also regarding 12.1. Paige Ellinger is the writer. I'm a parent of 2 children at RSC, Robert Semple Elementary. Following the horror in DC last week, it is more important than ever that we do everything possible to ensure that all our children feel safe and supported. I fear that my own instinct to maintain diplomacy, I have not done enough. I believe our community and our district has not done enough to make it absolutely clear that there is no place for racism in our schools or anywhere else. I appreciate new steps taken, but so much more is needed. Our silence makes us complicit in normalizing racism to a degree that has empowered racists and left our communities of color in fear. When children were separated from their families and essentially put in cages, I felt we should have released some statement, as other districts did, reassuring our immigrant communities that they are safe, welcomed, and wanted. I attended protests, but I regret that I didn't do more with the district. Now, as our children witness some of our leaders defending and enabling racists in the same spirit, I want our Black and brown children to know, to really feel that white people have their back and that the schools do not condone this kind of white supremacy that has been escalating. I grew up in a more racist part of the country, but for most of my childhood, I had the white privilege of being oblivious to racism. In the 3rd grade, my teacher had a wooden paddle, and she would take children into the closet and beat them. It wasn't until I was an adult that it occurred to me that almost all of the kids who were hit 9 to 10 were Black. Since then, I've wondered if I had known about racism when I witnessed so many 8-year-old Black children dragged to a closet and hit with a wooden paddle, maybe I could have done something. My point is that kids can be witness to racism and not recognize it if we don't educate them. I wish I had known back then. I would have spoken out, as I did later in life, becoming an activist. My family meant well. They wanted us to be colorblind, but not in being educated about racism. I didn't recognize it when it was right in front of me. I would like to see the following improvements to prevent racism in our schools. 1, anti-racist training for teachers. 2, a clear district policy for addressing racism for students and teachers. 3, establishment of a new curriculum to educate children about racism in this new social climate. 4, I feel the least we can do is pass a resolution, as so many other districts have, and as our own city council did last summer, in support of Black Lives Matter. Black lives do not just matter. Black lives are adored. Black lives are cherished, and we must make this clear to them. There has been an atmosphere of increasing aggression directed at the people of color in our community, and I want our children to know that BUSD doesn't condone it, that they are supported, and that they have a voice. Our white children need to be taught sensitivity and the critical understanding that truly to say Black Lives Matter doesn't mean white lives don't matter. It acknowledges that our beloved communities of color continue to face an unfair playing board, inequity that our white children are privileged not to see. In a diverse district with so much white leadership and so many white teachers, we must recognize that white silence perpetuates racism by projecting the appearance of consent in the minds of both racists and their victims. This is not about being politically correct. It is about making sure all our children feel safe and wanted. Thank you for your letter, Miss Ellinger.
Okay. And this next comment is for item 12.1 as well, and this is from Brittany Major. All right. Dear members of the board, I am a teacher in the Benicia Unified School District, and I have had the pleasure of teaching for 5 years. This year, a group of passionate teachers from multiple school sites came together to do meaningful work around the topic of anti-racism and equity. We formed a professional learning community and got to work examining our own bias, learning about white supremacy, culture, privilege, and so much more. After being inspired by my coworkers and the world around me this summer, I knew that I could no longer sit back and wait for others to initiate and implement anti-racism work into our daily work. Many of us went into the school year with the same attitude and brought so many ideas for personal and professional growth forward to our leadership but for many reasons, these ideas never took off. It was at this point that the PLC was formed. We have used our own time, heart, and money to make this PLC a priority. We believe that this work is more than important right now. It is essential. We believe this work has changed us as people, and as educators, will allow us to empower our students to build a better future. This work that I have done in the PLC has guided me in the best possible way. This work is guiding my every move as a teacher. This work is showing me ways in which I need to better advocate for my students and where I need to sit and listen to them. This work is reminding me that unless I work to break down barriers and build strong, meaningful relationships with my students and their families, learning will never happen. Thank you for taking the time to read this and to listen to the work that we have started and hope to continue with the district in the future. I believe that what we are doing in the PLC has the power to change our students' educational journey for the better. We would like to call you into partnering with us as we continue to take action and focus our efforts on creating an anti-racist community within our classrooms, focused on student voice and growth. In partnership, Brittany Major. Thank you for your comment.
Okay, this next person submitted regarding 12.1, Andrew Barrett. Dear members of the board, I am the father of a multiracial family. My children attend Benicia schools. I teach at Robert Semple. I am a member of the Benicia Anti-Racist PLC group, a voluntary group of elementary teachers with 25 plus members. We hired an incredible equity expert to train us and help us. This was done because our district wasn't doing it. I came from a very diverse district. Moving to Benicia Unified, I was staggered by the lack of diversity on staff. It didn't seem possible in the Bay Area. Only 4.7% of certificated staff identify as African American or multiracial compared to 80% of staff who identify as white. Those numbers are even wider when looking at admin data. As just one simple comparison piece, only 41% of Robert Semple students identified as solely white this year. How can this difference be? The inequity of demographics on staff is compounded by their issues such as imbalanced classmaking, imbalanced suspension, and achievement data, yet change is glacial. I'm also reminded of the words of Dr. King in his letter from Birmingham jail. For years now, I have heard the word wait. This wait has almost always meant never. Never. Justice too long delayed is justice denied, end quote. Today, that's wait. I think he means folks who have been surrounding alarm bells around equity and implicit racism in our district are energized by new staff and new eyes coming in. We all will see the glaring inequity and need to fix it. Here are my humble suggestions. Number one, demographics of our staff should match or exceed the demographics of our students. 2, an urgent changing of our hiring and promotion practices. 3, undergo a voluntary equity audit of our district with the help of an outside agency. 4, PD and PLC should run frequently with equity as a primary lens and run by outside experts in their field. 5, set incredibly strict time limits on exceeding these goals. Black Lives Matter, equity matters, anti-racist practices matter, balanced classes matter. Stating this out loud matters. I want my multiracial family to be proud of their father and the district he works in. Thank you, Mr. Barrett.
Okay. The next item is for addressing 12.1, and this is from Rebecca Lind. Dear members of the board, I would like to begin by stating that I am a white parent and educator in Benicia Unified School District. Recently, I have had the pleasure of joining a group of wonderful educators in the district in a public learning community centered around the topic of anti-racism and equity. We have begun examining our biases, white supremacy, culture, white privilege, and fragility. This work has been on our own time, our own money and efforts. We are passionate about this work and have made it a priority to educate ourselves on these topics and bring our growth into our classrooms and community. I believe that when we know better, we are able to do better for ourselves, our students, our children, and community. I feel that it is a responsibility of our district, a district majority of white administration and educators to actively condemn and work against racism. As alarming events have been happening in our country and community over the past year, the district has failed to take action or even take a stance against racism. Not only is the district remaining silent on the issues of injustice, inequalities, and racism, but I feel as though I am being asked as a classroom teacher to join them in this silence. I do not have confidence that this school district believes Black Lives Matter, that equity matters, or that anti-racist practices matter. I'm deeply saddened by this and find it absolutely unacceptable. I'm asking that the district speak up and voice that Black Lives Matter, equity matters, and anti-racist practices matter. This is urgent work and should be at the core of BUSD and the community of Benicia as a whole. We would like to call you into partnering with us as we take action and focus our efforts on creating an anti-racist community within our own classrooms and schools. In partnership, Rebecca Lind. Thank you.
Okay, the next item is also regarding 12.1, Nicole DeRosa. I fully support equity training for staff at BUSD. We have to do better for our community. Wow, that was a quick one.
I know. All right. All right, I have the next one. This is addressing item 13.1. This is from Victoria Greener. Okay. Dear esteemed trustees, knowing that you will be reconsidering your decision from November 19th, 2020 to reopen Benicia schools for hybrid instruction once Solano County is out of the purple tier, I would like to respectfully request that you revise your original motion to state that any return to the purple tier would trigger that schools also return to exclusively virtual instruction. I'm sure you agree that the health and safety of our students and staff of BUSD is of paramount importance, and if school is not safe to conduct now in purple tier, it won't be if and when the county ever returns to that status. Thank you, Victoria Greener, teacher, Benicia Unified School District. Thank you.
Okay, next up is a letter about 12.1. Dear members of the board, I am a teacher in the Benicia Unified School District, and I have had the pleasure of teaching here for 2 years. This year, a group of passionate teachers from multiple school sites came together to do meaningful work around the topic of anti-racism and equity. We formed a professional learning community and got to work examining our own bias, learning about white supremacy, culture, privilege, and so much more. We have used our own time, heart, and money to make this a priority. We believe that this work is more than important right now. It is essential. We believe this work has changed us as people and as educators and will allow us to empower our students to build a better future. Thank you for taking the time to read this and to listen to the work that we have started and hope to continue with the district in the future. This work should be at the core of BUSD and the community of Benicia as a whole. We would like to call you in to partnering with us as we take action and focus our efforts on creating an anti-racist community within our own classrooms, focused on student voice and growth. In partnership, Victoria Greener. Thank you for sharing.
The next comment is for item 12.1, and this is from Megan Carroll. Okay. As Dr. Young stated in his recent letter, we are living through complex and unpredictable times. As educators, we play a critical role in walking through this with our students. I'm disappointed with the lack of response from our district on the overt racism in our country and community. Our words and actions mean more now than ever before. Our work on anti-racism should be more than a check in box during PD. Many of us are already having these courageous conversations with our students, and are doing the work on our own time and on our own dime. Sorry. I'm calling the board and the district in on doing this hard work and meaningful work alongside us. Okay. All right. Thank you for your comment, Ms. Carroll.
Thank you. The next one is regarding item 12.2 from Kristen Eels. I don't think we should plan for a return to school this year. This would be disruptive to their learning as well as unsafe with cases still rising. We should plan for an amazing return to school in August of 2021, where teachers, staff, and kids will be safe as well as fully prepared for the return rather than scrambling just for a few weeks this year. Thank you very much for your comment, Kristen Eels.
Okay. All right, and the next comment, I don't have the item number, but it is from Amy Pattenout. I hope I said your name correctly. If I didn't, I apologize.
It's 12.2, Dr. Moss.
Okay, 12.2. Okay, thank you. All right, so it says, please send these kids back to school. My daughter is an 8th grader that's always been an honor roll student until now. She's struggling and failing all of her classes because she can't stay focused and has a ton of work to do. My kindergartner says he doesn't like school in Zoom. He doesn't like school in Zoom, which is super sad because kindergarten is special and supposed to be enjoyable. These kids need to go back to some type of normalcy. Okay, thank you for your comment.
Okay, next item up is 12.1. It's from Maureen McIntosh. As a parent and educator in BUSD, I'm taking a stand that every child deserves to be seen, heard, and deserves an education that is founded on truth and justice. Many conversations about equity have occurred, yet we are still in the same place we were 20 years ago when I came to this district. Thank you, Ms. McIntosh, for your comment.
Okay, all right, and the next comment, this is from, sorry.
Did you want me to read that one?
Yes.
Okay. The next, it's a 12.2 comment, and this is from Sarah Ferrucci. Please see comment below. Let's see. Please read the following letter by Dr. Jean Noble and signed by UCSF health professionals calling for February 1st school reopening. Copy of letter can be found in the Examiner dated January 11th, 2021. Okay, long-term school closures have a detrimental, measurable impact on children and adolescents. While school closure is challenging for all families, households, which include essential workers and those with limited financial means, are disproportionately impacted. Children with special needs, in particular, are uniquely negatively impacted because they depend on in-person learning for educational, rehabilitative, social, and behavioral resources that cannot be adequately supported in distance learning, resulting in additional stress on these families. School closures have widened the achievement gap. Educational inequities have the potential to translate into a lifelong barrier and a staggering number of life years lost. JAMA Net Open 2020, Item 3. In California, many private schools reopened during the fall, while a majority of public schools have been closed since March. The essential societal role of public education is to reflect in Article number 9 of California's Constitution, which mandates unfettered access to education for all children to ensure that a child's ability to participate in public education is not dependent on the financial means of their family. Because literacy and health literacy influence health status, prolonged school closure is contributing to social isolation among children and adolescents. It is taking a heavy toll on their mental health and well-being. The emergency department at the Benicia Children's Hospital in Oakland reported a temporal increase in the proportion of all children and youth 10 to 17 years of age who reported suicidal ideation from 6% in March 2020 to 16% in September 2020. Similarly, the CDC reported that compared to 2019, the proportion of pediatric emergency visits due to mental health issues in 2020 increased by 24% among children ages 5 to 11 and by 31% for children aged 12 to 17. Apart from the social isolation, an increase in high-risk behaviors among youth could be related to a lack of parental or adult supervision. The cumulative long-term impact of trauma related to social isolation, educational distress, family stress, and the stressors and other stressors that may culminate in post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, anxiety, and other behavioral disorders is reasonable to expect that children who live in poverty are even more likely to experience these adverse outcomes. There's also a real concern for significant but unknown drops in student attendance, especially in disadvantaged communities with less access to computers and the internet for online learning. School districts around the country are reporting higher rates of students failing classes, a phenomenon which has been disproportionately seen among low-income Latinx and African American children. Since March 2020, we have learned that young children are not the primary drivers of COVID-19 transmission. We have also learned that children are generally not at risk of severe health consequences from COVID-19. Indeed, in the entire state of California, there have been only 5 COVID-related deaths among persons younger than the age of 18. For comparison, there were 15 deaths due to influenza in the same age group during the 2018-19 flu season. Fortunately, there is accumulating evidence from the Bay Area and other states that schools can safely reopen. In Marin County, for example, more than 450,000 student days, i.e. tens of thousands of students on school campuses over 3 months, have been associated with just 6 cases of school-based transmission. That is, there have been only 6 additional COVID cases resulting from 40,000 students and 5,000 teachers interacting on campus since September. There is similarly reassuring data from the state of New York, where COVID prevalence is no higher amongst high school students and teachers who return to campus compared with the community matched prevalence rates. Okay, then I'm going to stop reading at this point. Thank you, Ms. Ferrucci, for your comment.
Okay. All right. The next item is to address item 13.1, and this is from Sherry Giannotti, and it reads as follows. Thank you, board, for taking the time to read and consider the many perspectives and opinions of us parents about our district's plan to reopen. I want to say that I have come to recognize that there are some organizing efforts to loudly voice narrative that conveys one of these perspectives. However, I do think that there may be an equal number of voices who may not be as loud or use the public comment process to feel that we do not want our district to act haste about getting our students, teachers, and staff back on campus in a time when COVID is spreading at an alarming rate and causing hardships on our healthcare system. I ask that the board respectively consider that many parents like me want what is safest and equitable for our students. Please consider my voice and my perspective. What is safe? Vaccines for school staff fully implemented, community resources available to test and treat COVID, protocols that mitigate spread of COVID when more people, students and staff are on campus, protocols that outline how it will be handled, and when students get colds, flu, COVID illnesses that keep them from coming to school for any length of time to avoid spreading said illness. Considerations for equity, a schedule that allows access for all families to opt to send their students to school. Parent work schedules and daytime transportation issues are currently not considered with the current hybrid model. Consideration that some families may not be able to risk COVID exposure in their households. How will their continued virtual academics be equal to those who are attending? How will a potential change in teacher, school, or schedule and the relationship forged between student teacher, especially in the elementary school grades, impact continuity of education for students? This is especially true for students and families whose access to resources and circumstances are already challenged. I have written before to say that I could not bring myself to complete the latest survey as the decisions I was being asked to make were not fair given my family's circumstances and were untimely asked the day we went into purple tier before times were as grim as they are now. My hope today is to respectfully voice that decisions around reopening schools consider the dire situation of our community in regarding COVID, as well as that safety and equity to be in the forefront of the decision-making process. I ask you do not act in haste. Please focus on how to safely and equitably get students back to school, not when to hurry up and get it done. Let's see. Okay. Thank you. That was the end of it. Thank you, Ms. Giannotti.
Okay, this one is regarding item number 13.1. This is from Elise Padua. These have been incredibly difficult times for our children, parents, and staff. We are currently facing some of the darkest days because of COVID-19 and its toll on our community. We have 5 months until this current school year is complete. While I know in-person learning is best for learning and teaching, my belief is that it is not currently the safest. I feel our kids have gone through enough change in the school year. Rushing them back into in-person learning in the winter months during a global pandemic isn't the safest way to go. Again, thank you, Ms. Padua.
Okay, and I have the next comment, and this one is from Rich and Angela Grigas, and it says, I hope that you please listen to what the parents and children are saying. They need to go back to school. The kids are not fine. Okay, thank you for your comments.
Okay, the next item is regarding, let's see, it's got to be 13.1. Kathleen Smith. How many times will it take for the parents' voices to be heard? We vote, we submit mandatory commitment surveys, etc., all to start over again. My position will not change. For the health and well-being of our children, our future, they need to be in school, learning, engaging, and socializing. There are many published safety guidelines that can guide a reopen. Is that being considered? Other schools have figured it out a safe way. As a working parent married to a first responder, I am struggling to understand how BUSD cannot implement and move forward. All of this is at the cost of our children. Open up the schools.
Okay. All right, and I have the next comment, and this is from Gina Phillips. And it says, please give us the choice to send our children back to school and approve the hybrid model as soon as possible. My son is in kindergarten and needs to be in class as this is a critical age for reading and writing. He needs face-to-face interaction with his teacher and classmates to thrive. Thank you, Ms. Phillips.
Okay, next is on 13.1 from Kathleen Ruiz. Hello, my name is Kathleen Ruiz, and I want to address the agenda item for the timeline for reopening schools for in-person. I'm commenting and advocating to open schools for an in-person education as soon as possible. I really don't understand with districts around us open, private schools in our town open, and some sports dance things now open, why we can't even open in the hybrid model at least. I know some feel for their children are not being assigned enough, and my junior is doing a lot more than he would have if he was taking the same classes in person. I've watched each meeting, and there has never been a reason with actual evidence given for the no votes. I truly hope our school board does the research themselves for our area before casting their vote. And please include a valid article by a physician or scientist that advocates us not to open schools for an in-person education and resume in-person education and resume distant learning. I also encourage any who feel our schools should be closed to do the same research. You will be surprised. I know I was. Our kids deserve more than our district is doing for them. Thank you very much, Ms. Ruiz.
Okay, and I have the next item. This is from Leah Mayos, and this is regarding the reopening as well. And it says, I do not think schools are safe enough to be open during this high time of infection rates. It would be best to wait until teachers and vulnerable parents have had time to get vaccinated and for case numbers to drop. I feel it would be irresponsible of the school board to put the school district in jeopardy of litigation from staff and families. While I do agree that in person is best for the students, I don't think now is the time for it. Thank you for your hard work and consideration thus far during this pandemic. Thank you, Ms. Mayos.
Next is also on 13.1, the reopening of schools. This is from Brittany Sapien. As a parent of 3 children in the district, 2 of which are enrolled in special ed, I would like to strongly implore the board to vote to adhere to the state guidelines provided by the district by the Department of Ed, allowing for small groups and one-on-one instruction to begin once the county has entered the purple tier, as many districts, both smaller and larger than BUSD, already have. There are services that are imperative to the learning of special education students, many of whom now have several areas of marked regression due to their learning styles being incompatible with the Zoom platform. I have the greatest confidence in the professionals employed by the Department of Ed. They are the experts in their field as opposed to some of our school board members. I find it extremely arrogant for certain members of the board to seek to deviate from the state guidelines and recommendations. I would like to know what it is that makes them feel as if they are more qualified to determine the district's protocols. There's absolutely no reason why Benicia Unified should not already have a plan of reopening in place. Furthermore, it was alarming to watch both the November and December meetings and hear members of the board state that they were unclear on what they were voting on during the November meeting. Dr. Young repeated the intent of the vote multiple times before the votes were cast. Those statements led me to question the competency of certain board members of the board. Lastly, I would like to call on Mr. Maselli to resign himself from the board, given that he has no ability to be impartial or place the needs of the students and families at the forefront, given that he is the spouse of a teacher within the district, outlining clear conflict of interest. Again, please, before casting your votes tonight, consider the needs of the students with the greatest challenges the greatest challenges to accessing their education through this pandemic. Do not continue to ignore their needs. Thank you so much. Just trying to go back. Ms. Sapien.
Okay. All right, so I have the next item. It's to address item 13.1, and this is from James Ferrucci. It says, to the school board members of BUSD, I would like to inquire as to why we are revisiting an already approved motion. If I understand correctly, the board previously passed a motion to proceed with in-person learning only as approved by the state of California guidelines. I also understood there was not enough there was not a date set by our school board for this, just a motion to proceed once approved. So by revisiting such an open-ended motion dependent solely upon the expert medical guidance of our state, what is the point? With that said, understanding there is a current spike in cases, approval from the state will not be granted until that is mitigated. So approval only will come when it is safe to proceed. I, like many members of the community, are concerned of the hesitation to begin in-person learning. Clearly, there have been numerous opinions from both the community and the board, both for and against. The area I struggle with is how do non-medical professionals override the science of medical professionals? I understand we all have our personal opinions, and that is great. But as a board, the job before you is to provide education to the community, to provide a safe working environment for the employees, to provide a choice for the community of in-person or virtual learning. I ask you, do not take away any future opportunities for the students to return to the classroom. The pandemic rules have been hard enough at this point. Why further Why further the demise of their education based on personal feelings? If any of the board members just once has left your home to shop, grab a coffee or anything else that has required some level of staff to accomplish your task, surely you can see how confusing and hypocritical it is that educators can't be made as safe as a supermarket checker. Please, no personal agendas and do your job. Educate the children to the best of your ability following state guidelines. Respectfully, James Ferrucci II. Thank you, Mr. Ferrucci, for your comment.
Okay, the next one is on items 12.1 and 13.1. This is from Leah Wilson. My name's Leah Wilson, and I am writing as a parent of a simple fifth grader. I have two comments. The first is regarding reopening of school. I continue to support the board and district leadership making careful decisions regarding the appropriate time to reopen and keeping the safety of our children, the teachers and staff, and the community at large as top priority. Distance learning is difficult and not ideal for most of our kids. The pandemic is a crisis with so many layers: a public health crisis, a mental health crisis, an academic crisis, a racial injustice and equity crisis. I recognize all of this, but public health experts agree that the time to reopen is when the community spread is low, and community spread is at an all-time high. I support the schools reopening when it is safe. And until then, I hope the district will continue to work hard and be creative in offering academic, SEL, and mental health supports to our children, especially the children who most need it. I would also like to acknowledge the district's efforts in beginning conversations around addressing equity in Benicia schools. I look forward to hearing the update tonight and hope to learn more about specific actions being taken regarding things like equity and anti-racist training for teachers and staff, hiring practices to attract and retain diverse teachers, auditing curriculum and instructional materials at all grade levels to reflect cultural and racial diversity. Addressing systemic racism in our schools is an urgent moral necessity, and I hope BUSD moves more quickly to do this work. Thank you. Thank you, Leah Wilson.
Okay, I have the next item, which is to address item 12.1, and this is from Tara Bonville, and it reads, I'm a parent of children that attend Mary Farmer and Benicia High School. I want to bring to your attention concerns that I have that the school district has not done enough to address or speak to racial inequality in our schools. I'm concerned about this because my own family has experienced racial discrimination in our city. As a parent, it is important that our districts lay out an action plan about how they are going to address this very important issue and what steps they will be taking to implement that action plan now. With so much gratitude, Tara B. Thank you, Ms. Bonville.
Okay. The next one is to address 13.1, Robin Dismuke. I speak on behalf of most parents and believe it is necessary to bring back in-person learning. My son is 12, attending BMS as a sixth grader. My daughter is in eighth grade. I see and hear all the struggles they are experiencing, and it is heartbreaking to hear that they feel they are not learning anything. The technology is not great. Zoom fails, microphone issues, can't rewind to listen back as to what the teacher was instructing. These are just a few issues they encounter on a daily basis. They are missing out on the crucial years of school. These years determine their futures in college education. It's absurd that us parents have no say when it comes to what's best for our own children. For anyone who feels different, they have the right to keep their kids home. But us who want our kids in the classroom setting have no choice. These kids are being robbed of their social interaction, teacher interaction, and self-confidence. I see the struggles. There needs to be a meet in the middle ground and a meet in the middle point. Thank you very much, Robin Dismuke, for your letter.
Okay. All right. The next one is to address 12.1, and this is from Krista Heredia. And it reads, I'm a parent of two children who attend Robert Semple Elementary. I want to bring to your attention my concern that the school district has not done enough to address racial inequality in our schools. Declaring your commitment, equal opportunity for all individuals in education, does not go far enough. I think our community would benefit from from BUSD policy acknowledging and affirming that Black Lives Matter. It is my understanding that the board consulted with the African American Parent Group and plans to present goals for equity work to be done in BUSD. I have so many questions about this process. Who formed the parent group? What is this parent group empowered to do? Have board members spent time listening to personal experiences of these African American families who participate in this group? I mean, really listen to how they and their children navigate a school system that is predominantly made up of white teachers with white administrators. Are the goals being presented tonight driven by really hearing those experiences, and are they supported by our African American families? If the first and most urgent step is not to invest in anti-racist learning for BUSD staff, then this equity work is futile and will never go far enough. I know there is already a large group of BUSD teachers who meet on their own time to do anti-racist learning. I'm also aware there is sentiment from the BUSD staff that this kind of training is not necessary because they have not personally witnessed racism in their sphere. I would also argue that these staffers are blinded by their own privilege and are the ones who need it the most. Anti-racist training for all BUSD staff should be a top priority and a standard going forward. Our nation is at a pivotal moment acknowledging the deep-seated effects of systemic racism. Denial will no longer be tolerable or sustainable. Thanks for your efforts for the Benicia Black Lives Matter group. Our city will soon have its first equity and diversity manager. Mayor Steve Young has publicly declared that Black Lives Matter. I stand together with other parents, teachers, and community members asking to know what anti-racist trainings our BUSD school board will be seeking out as majority white district leaders and for our white teachers to learn how to support our Black students. For the record, I am white, a Latina mother. We moved to Benicia in 2009 when our eldest son was entering the 6th grade. He went on to attend BMS and BHS. With our 2 youngest sons, our tenure at Robert Semple so far has been 5 years. In all of that time, the only Black teacher or administrator my children have experienced is my eldest son's middle school PE teacher for 1 school year. Otherwise, all of the teachers and administrators have been white. This fact has always concerned me. Should we be talking about possible racial biases in BUSD hiring practices? Yes. Should we be talking about the importance of representation in school leadership positions? Yes. Should we be talking about overhauling curriculum to reflect historical truth rather than our current curriculum that silences the ugly racist truths? Yes. But these conversations will not lead to real change unless our leadership and staff are equipped with anti-racist learning. Therefore, I implore you to make anti-racist training a priority now. I also implore you to seek partnerships with those in our community who are already doing the work. The time is now for action steps. Important history is in the making. This is our opportunity to be on the right side of it. Okay. And thank you for your comments, Mrs. Heredia.
Well,
That was the
thank
last
you.
one.
Thank you, Dr. Moss. And it was just brought to my attention that last letter we may have read a second time. So
Yeah, I was thinking that. I was like, I think I read this one, but yeah. So,
yeah. So just to let everybody out there know.
Right, thank you.
No worries. We got through them, and I want to thank everybody for submitting their letters and comments. And we are going to move on to item number 11, which is the consent calendar. So do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar? Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Okay, all matters listed under the consent calendar are considered by the board to be routine and will be approved by the board in one motion. There will be no discussion on these items unless members of the board, staff, or public request specific items to be pulled and discussed. Now, do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
now that you've clarified that, I will be happy to make a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented tonight.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Go ahead, Cece.
Second.
All right. Thank you so much. Any discussion? No discussion.
Or vote.
So what? What did you say, Ms. Ferrucci? So
Let's call for a vote.
let's call for a vote. I'm so tired from reading. Yes, let's call for a vote. Let's call for a vote. Do I hear? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Yes.
All those opposed? Hearing none, seeing none, the motion carries. Okay, I will get it together, you guys, I promise. The next item we have is regarding, I can't even read this, 12.1 discussion, we're on item 12, 12.1, equity and opportunity update. Dr. Beetson, I know you have a slideshow to present, and we'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Board, and Dr. Young for having me here this evening to share our continued work in the area of equity and opportunity. I know we just heard many comments, and so I'm excited to continue our partnership, let you know the work that we have done and that we have in the works to continue to do on this equity and opportunity journey. So what I'm hoping that we can cover tonight is, as I said, going a little more into depth about some of the work that we have engaged in over the last few years in the area of equity and culturally responsive practices. Ask for your support in the direction of these proposed goals and actions, knowing that they are in draft form right now because we need to continue to get more input in them with them. And then to ask for your support and promotion in continuing to forward the equity and opportunity work that we are embarking on in BUSD. So I want to take us back a little bit to how this started and why this started. It started actually very deliberately and thoughtfully and intentionally several years ago with feedback from our stakeholders being our students. Many students came forward and expressed concern and gave us really direct feedback about what was working and what wasn't working for them. We had messages and conversations with many parents about the same issues around our practices and some curriculum issues and so forth. We did some research on what are some best practices in the area of equity. We have a lot of data that showed that things weren't as equitable as we want them to be, especially when we think about equity, we want all students to learn at their very highest potential. That's right in our mission statement. And of course, we're going to do all that we can to support all students in their next learning step and support them socially, emotionally, and academically. But we also, when we look at our data, have pronounced groups of students that have traditionally been underperforming and have been underserved. And so with that lens, our students who are in special ed and our students who are African American stand out in many different areas, and that has caused us and required us and have this imperative to do this continued work and partnership. So when we look at how many students of color are in advanced placement classes or students who aren't traditionally taking those classes, how do we open that door for future students? How do we remove barriers? When we look at our absenteeism rate, especially when we look at chronic absenteeism, when students are absent 10 or more days of the days that we're in school, we have certain student groups, one being our African American group and the other was our students in special ed that had a much higher proportion of chronic absenteeism than other student groups. We heard tonight in several of our comments about curriculum relevancy. And so a couple of years ago, my department looked at the process in which we adopt curriculum and created a pretty robust process, but we will continue to go back and look at that, where we when we do piloting material, we look for lots of different factors and components, and there are many factors that rely on and point to rather equity and making sure that different races, different viewpoints are pointed out in the curriculum. And we use that as a tool as we evaluate curriculum that's up for adoption. I also know that our libraries are really working hard to ensure that we have a wide range of material available, and they're expanding their libraries. We actually put money in our LCAP over the last couple of years to provide money right to all of our district libraries to do just that work. Other data that showed that we needed to pay attention to equity and the progress and achievement of different student groups was our CASP data, that's our state testing, and then our REACH data, which is a survey that goes out primarily to 6th through 12th graders, and it stands for relationships, effort, achievement, cognition, and heart, or aspirations, not achievement, I'm sorry, cognition and heart. And there were certain questions in there that for certain student groups, it was clear we were not doing all that we could. And part of it was connecting our sparks to learning. So our passions and our interests to learning, finding that relevancy in the curriculum, and around diversity and fitting in. We talked about special ed and really looking at meeting the needs of our students who are in specialized education. And so over the course of last year, we worked with our new director of special education and did some shifting of our model so that we could better serve our students. Our students who are African American, through all of these data points and feedback, we have solicited specific feedback from them, and we'll continue to do so. And another data point is our suspension data, and we do look carefully at that and have inequities in our suspension practices as well. And so those are all things that have driven us to embark on this work over the last couple of years and will continue to propel us into the future. So what have we done? And we heard lots, again, many things. We started several years ago with smaller groups of administrators and staff investigating different possibilities. We did some book clubs. We attended different conferences. We had trainers come in for our administrators on implicit bias. And so there's a whole list here of things that we did. And slowly we started to try out different presenters, different trainers, who will be a good fit for us. And last year, before the pandemic hit, we had a group of administrators and teachers from across the district attend a series of trainings through our County Office of Education that was put on by Epic Education. And that is an organization that's led by Dr. Nancy Dome, really well known, that does profound work in this area. And through conversations with them, attending those trainings, felt like that Epic Education was a good fit for a requirement for all staff. And so over the course of this summer and then through this entire school year, our entire staff and administrators, and that's classified and certificated, have been participating and have access to 7 different modules. We know it is not everything that we need to do, but it is where we are at this moment. But I just wanted to give you some titles of the types of trainings that we have access to continue those conversations. So how to talk about race, microaggression in action, supporting student empowerment, how to be an ally against LGBTQ and bullying. We've done implicit bias. One of our trainers 2 years ago, we did a 6-month mini course that was open to all of our administrators and teachers who wanted to attend. And we actually paid teachers on a time card to come to that. And it was called Inclusive Practices Academy, where we did some deep dive into inclusive practices with a trainer that came alongside Universal Design for Learning, which is really about removing barriers for students and look at your practices. And through that, we did some work on white fragility and implicit bias. So while it hasn't been as we still have work to do. We are going to just put that out there. We still have continued to work to do. We have grown that practice, and we will continue to do that work. We wanted to lay a foundation started with, like I said, with our small pockets of teachers. It grew to being available to all staff. We've worked with different consultants, and then have continued with EPIC. And one of the things that we're investigating currently is scheduling some facilitated dialogue with the trainers from EPIC to come virtually, of course, and continue to have conversation and dialogue around the topics of the trainings that we have access to this school year. The other thing that was on that list was our African American parent group. So we started several years ago, a small group of parents, moms actually, started meeting informally with Dr. Young. We grew that group, and it was a little bit of word of mouth where they invited different folks, and we started meeting on a more regular basis and really did a lot of listening and listening to their experiences, what was working, what wasn't working, struggles they were having where they saw things were inequitable. And so we did that for a couple of years. And over the course of all of that listening and dialogue, we came up with these areas, and we're calling them, I had them listed as goals earlier, and it was pointed out to me that there weren't really goals, but they're more areas of focus for us to do some work. So that was really in continuing to engage parents as partners, as bring in the parents to the table, looking at our curriculum, making sure that it is relevant, inclusive, and engaging, and from multiple perspectives. Another one was really getting to see and know our students for who they are. And so really looking at that idea of cultural identity and bringing that to the table and making that really about who we are as a district, is getting to know and see students and understand who they are, and making sure that they see themselves as part of our Benicia Unified School District. Increasing African American staff in BUSD, that is a goal for us. It's a goal actually across the state, is to increase African American staff in education. And we are looking at ways of how do we continue to draw and get applicants to come to BUSD. And so that is something we're having a lot of conversation on. And then another one is to build and enhance partnerships with the Benicia Police Department and our community. And we heard that as well. We have school resource officers in our school, and we have a great relationship with our police department, and we want to continue to find ways to partner so that it is a healthy relationship in all directions. So from those areas of focus, that's down the left side, and this is draft. It should say draft on it, and I don't have draft written on here yet, but the middle column are some suggested action steps, and then the whole right column are the metrics. So how do we know if we're meeting these areas of focus or these targets? How can we turn those pieces into the actionable goals? How do we see increases in our test scores and in our survey feedback and in forums that we have on our reach data, in our attendance, on our suspension data? So we'll be looking at all of those. And this is, as I said, a draft. Our intention is that we will continue to bring this back to get more feedback. We did that, I believe it was last week, or maybe it was the week before, with our African American parent group. We had over 33 folks in attendance, and we started by putting folks into some breakout rooms to really do a deep dive into those areas of focus and the actions and the metrics, and give us some feedback. And here are some of the themes that came out of that feedback. We need to go back and realign those focus. They liked the focus areas. They thought they were the right focus areas, but we need to align the focus areas, the actions, and metrics, because there was some confusion about how certain things measured certain actions and why actions were linked to focus areas. So that will be continued work that we will need to do. Another piece that was pointed out was we need to continue to get more student voice in this work. And so we will look at ways to do that. African American staff representation, we had some conversation about how do we do that and how can we make that actionable. And I know that Dr. Gill, who attends those meetings as well, and is very much in support of this, is looking at reaching out and has already started to historically Black universities to try to get folks to apply to Benicia. We identified a need to communicate this work, and I think that's loud and clear, that we have to find ways to communicate the work that we're doing, and to continue to be receptive to feedback and to that outreach. And again, then looking at our curriculum and ensuring that teachers have the tools that they need to engage in curriculum and conversation that's inclusive and representative of the African American perspective. So those are themes that we will need to weave back in and go back in to revise those areas of focus with actions and metrics. And so then where are we heading, and what are some of the, this is not completely inclusive by any means, not inclusive, that's not the word I want. Comprehensive is the word I wanted to say. It's not completely comprehensive, but here are some next steps in the work that we're doing. We are working to create an equity and opportunity district-wide team that would have representation from the different groups. So we have our African American parent group that one of the other actions on here is formalizing that so that it is sustaining into the future. And that's one of the things about doing this work is we want to ensure that we put down roots that are deep enough and lay a foundation that is strong enough that it continues into the future, and it's not something that is just the next kind of work in the moment, but that it continues on. And so with this district equity and opportunity team, we're talking about making sure that we have representation on that from our different parent groups and staff across the district and student voice as well. Of course, continued and focused professional development. We need to examine policy and practices that perpetuate barriers for students, especially our African American students, but for any students. We're looking at how do we bring together a strategic planning and LCAP process that is really robust and has both long-term and short-term goals and actions, and that equity is a core of the work that we're doing. One of the things that we did a year ago before we went out on the pandemic was our stakeholder engagement around an LCAP that never fully got implemented because the state shifted the requirement. But our primary goal was to create a sense of belonging for all students to feel connected to their school community. And that came out of the feedback, especially feedback from our African American students in and then the data that we were looking at, that they did not feel connected. And so we set that as a broad goal with very specific actions underneath, and that will continue to be a goal as we move forward. And then finally, Ms. Rice has worked really hard with a few other folks to write a grant to the state. They have some mini grants that came out, and they gave us about a 2.5-week turnaround on equity, for equity purposes, to continue equity work in districts. And so Ms. Rice wrote that grant and submitted it, and we want to use that funding, should we get it, to create a position, equity and opportunity liaison position. And that would be somebody that would really help focused on this, help us keep focused on this work and do a lot of communication and outreach and help us continue to move this work forward. And so hopefully that will be able to come to fruition so that we can continue to move in this direction, and hopefully at a faster pace. But we do know that we are in this for the long haul. We are committed to this work. It is the core of the work that we're doing. It is our charge and our imperative as educators. And so what I have linked for you on this end slide are several documents. There's a video, there's a wonderful history of public education timeline that really shows the history of education and focuses on African American experience, but not solely on that. And where we are today. And I would encourage you to take some time and go through those. That Water of Systems Change article is really pretty powerful. The second link on there is Epic Education Modules. The link is actually to the Epic Education website. And what I would like to do is register you, school board, if you are interested in the EPIC education modules. And what would happen is you would get an email from EPIC Education, and it would show you how to log in, and you would have access to the 7 modules that our teachers have had access to this school year. So you could say inside of that, there are articles and there are videos and there are all kinds of things that you can explore. There's reflection questions and so forth. And so I can do that for you. And I just wanted to let you know so that before we signed you up, so that you didn't see things showing up in your email and you weren't sure what that was. And so I will get that going and you'll have access to that information as well. And so I would love to open this up for a discussion, questions, comments, and to really get a direction from you that this is the work that you would like us to continue to move forward.
Thank you so much, Dr. Beatson. That is wonderful information that's being shared, and it is so important that we make sure to do better than we've been doing regarding equity. And I think that the EPIC, I look forward to being part of that community with the EPIC. So I'll look forward to getting that email. I'm sure the other board members will as well. But let's open it up to discussion. Does anybody have anything they would like to say? Okay, Diane Ferrucci.
Yeah, I'd like to make 2 comments. First, I want to say thank you because I really do appreciate the depth of all the work going on. But with that said, and reflecting on all the comments today, what I'm wondering, Dr. Beatson, is, you know how we do regular updates and communication regarding our LCAP work, and we talk about our data, and we bring all that forward. I wonder if, in fact, we can better communicate our regular work on what's going on with our equity work within our district, so that in fact we know the equity and opportunity work. We know it's going forward, but we need to know it's going forward, if that's making sense. And I think it lets us communicate with parents. It lets us confirm the work that's happening. So we don't often hear about all the other plans we have going on a regular basis, but it is part of our LCAP. It is part of our district goals. It was part of our strategic planning then, and I assume as we visit again, it will come up again. I'm just wondering if maybe we could have more regular updates here as new things are coming forward and other things are happening. I think I'd like to throw that out there as a request, that happens if everybody is willing to agree with that. And then I also want to acknowledge that I think the idea of a grant and bringing a person on board to support and help all the equity work, because you're right, I think it would make it more powerful. And I think it would be great to have someone who is in the district that can be working with us and supporting that as well. So I applaud those 2 things, and I'm also going to request more regular communication. I think that will help us to reach our community because they're not hearing it.
Absolutely. And about the equity liaison, I was thinking, we're thinking when they have a singular focus,
right?
It's going to really help, even though that work touches everything, someone that can really help us pull those pieces together.
Right.
Yes.
I'll go after you, Ms. Grubbs.
Ms. Grubbs.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Moss. I was just wondering, we heard a lot about, first of all, thank you for all the work that you're doing. It's certainly needed and certainly appreciated. And it is a tough job going forward. But I was wondering about the PLC that we heard about. And I'm wondering, it sounded like they didn't have they were asking the district to join them. And I'm wondering if you have considered that, or if you would consider joining this teacher PLC equity group.
So my understanding is they wanted to meet outside of school hours, which we applaud. Growing professionally is wonderful, and we know that teachers do tons of work around that. And so I applaud this group for for meeting. They had, one of them had a connection with a facilitator, and they're meeting outside of school hours. And my understanding is they wanted to just meet with teachers first before they brought in administrators to sit around the table. That was the feedback that we had gotten. And so we've started some conversation, and I think Ms. Rice has now set up a meeting with that facilitator to kind of learn more about the work that she's doing. So I think they wanted to sort of get grounded as teachers themselves with that work and create their own safe space to have those conversations.
Oh, maybe I misunderstood them, because I thought I heard them say that they would like to have more input from the district, and asking for some just collaboration,
right?
Input. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and then I just wanted to say thank you for your efforts. And what I would like to know is, in terms of transparency and participation, has this been presented as something as being optional, or is it something that has been, just really kind of? I know that there's PD days and things like that, but is this something? Has this been an effort that has been like, this is what we're doing? And I ask that because I know that as a former parent of the district, and as one of the mothers who came early on a few years back to start having these conversations, and then just looking at, especially like the data trends, I know that over the years that African American students have not been doing well at all in our district. And in fact, their scores have been going down like year after year. So I know that the data has really driven, part of this conversation as well. Has it been like is it just an optional thing? And I'm glad that with the comments that we heard earlier, I definitely appreciate the work that I know that some of the teachers are doing. But has it been just an optional thing for folks? Because I think the modules are great to have access to, but is it kind of like, here they are, if you want to do it, you can. And so it kind of opens up that window of, for some, maybe, just if you don't have time, then it's very difficult to take on another thing.
So great question. Thank you for bringing that up. So we built, because all of our professional development days were virtual this year, we were not able to come together in person. We had these grandiose plans of doing some of that work. And when we couldn't do that, we built basically a Google Classroom, and we had several different topics, and equity was one of them, with those EPIC modules, and then a lot of other resources. And teachers were required to. We wanted to give some choice because people are entering the conversation at different places, and so they had to do at least 3 of the 7 modules. So that was a requirement. Now, not everyone did all of the same modules, and we just received the information from EPIC, actually, so we can see who's done which modules, which were the most relevant. But I can tell you that our principals are continuing to use them, either in part or in whole, with their staff. So Christina Moore, with some of her staff, they're doing some continued work. So they'll all decide on which is the next video or portion of a module to look at, and then they come together and they have more conversation about it. I was just on the phone with Brianna Kleinschmidt, our high school principal, and she was talking about digging into that, not wanting to be repetitive if teachers had already done that, but finding ways to facilitate it. And then, as I said, Ms. Rice is in conversation with EPIC to say, okay, we've given folks about half a year to really dive in. They had to do at least 3, and people did, and we opened, and they had to write a reflection. So they had some things they had to turn into their administrators after they did that work. And then bringing to the table EPIC again to open up some facilitated conversation. And that we haven't actually even talked with our administrators about that yet, and when that would happen. If we would do it on some Fridays as some required PD, that's a possibility, and then potentially some after school time, which would be some optional PD. So we're looking at how to fit it in within the confines of the school day. And, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of PD time, but so it was both is the answer to that question.
All All right, thank you. And then I do appreciate what Ms. Ferrucci said about is just about having that information, like I guess like regular updates, so that folks really know what is happening, so that there's not there's not a mystery behind, like, I think they're doing equity, I think they support it, I think they're addressing all these things, and so that would be really helpful. And then in terms of curriculum, what are you? So is that just something down the road that you're going to work with a team of folks to start exploring curriculum, or how is that? What is going to happen with that?
Well, I think we have to have some conversation, and maybe that's with the equity team, or we do it by the site level and find out specifically what it is that they're looking for. So, for instance, we just adopted some new history curriculum at middle school, and Ms. Rice leads a very robust process. And I can share with you our evaluation tool that they use as they look at different curriculum, both in trying to decide which curriculum to pilot, because we always try to pilot at least 2 different curriculum, and then the evaluation tool that they use at the end, where they start to really identify what different components, and then there's a whole equity lens in that evaluation tool as well. That said, we will go out and continue to look and see if there is a better way to evaluate curriculum that we're missing, for sure. And then maybe one of the processes that, and I'm, kind of thinking about this on the spot, but one of the processes we can do is lay it up against some older curriculum that we have and see where we are. We always have a cycle of when we reevaluate curriculum, but if we aren't in a position to purchase a whole new curriculum for a particular subject matter, we can definitely find some support materials to bring in until we're ready to do that.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Beatson. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, thank you again. Also, Stephanie Rice, thank you for your work on this as well. We're going to move on to just item number 12.2, the learning plan update and Governor Newsom's California Safe Schools Plan. That would be Dr. Young.
Thank you very much. You're welcome. Let me share my screen here.
Oh.
Leslie, Dr. Beatson.
I'm sharing, right?
No, I practiced. Mikey worked with me.
Okay.
He gave me a little session here. So, all right. So I'll try to move this along. I wanted to provide a quick summary of this new proposal that Governor Newsom unveiled on December 30th. And I wanted to go over it this evening. So trustees, there's some attachments to the board and the public, that as well, that describes, the rationale and the science behind it, and kind of a summary of the way that this works. So I want to point out the fact that it still needs to be passed by the legislature. So there's a number of elements in here that that involve money and timelines and safety elements that are still being wrestled with at the legislative level. And they just start talking about it in session, I believe, on Monday. So let me go through this with you to give you an overview. And again, this is a summary of the main points in Governor Newsom's new plan for public schools. Quickly, while California schools continue to address COVID surge, his point is it's never too soon to get kids back in the classroom. Again, these are positions coming from the governor and his science team. He likes to say learning is not negotiable, but he points out the fact that obviously neither is safety. We spent a lot of time on mitigation practices that are reflected in our safety MOUs. I have a question, Dr. Beatson. You see how everybody's faces are on the side of my screen and I can't see my whole text? Do I just look?
Yes. So if you hold your cursor up towards the top of where their faces are, click on the one that only has one line. It's going to just hide everybody. There's going to be if you hold up your cursor at the very above the person who's on the top, you're going to see a box, a 2-line, a 1-line, and then a skinny line over to the left. Click on the skinny line. Everybody will disappear for you.
Thanks everybody for being patient. I'm not showing technical skills, am I? The bar at the top, pause, annotate, remote control, more.
Nope.
What about view? Do you see a view sign? A view bar?
Maybe a speaker view?
You have view.
If you just look at, not on the bar going across the top, but how do I describe?
It's okay. Hey, I'll work with it because my cursor's not showing up.
Do you want me to, you want me to share?
Yes.
Okay, so you stop sharing and then I will share.
Sorry, everybody. Thank you. Okay. There we go.
Okay.
It worked when I practiced. I'm not sure what happened. Okay, getting back to the plan. It's in the legislature. We already talked about that. Safety mitigation measures. He points out the fact that they can help. The masks, the cleaning, the 6 feet, all of those things do make a difference, obviously. His point in the research, and I know there's lots of conversation around that, and the research is emerging, talks about transmission among or from younger students is not common, particularly at the elementary level. Go ahead. The CDC study of kids with positive and negative COVID tests across 2 states going to school was not associated with a higher risk of getting COVID-19. And again, I'm pointing these out because these are the data points that he shared. And I know there's lots of debate around the emerging data, but this is what he is pointing to. Thank you. Lowering transmission, safety mitigation. You know, he talks about how these things do work, that masks, physical distancing, we talked about that, stable groups, washing hands, ventilation, screening. All of those things are represented in the 2 MOUs that we passed earlier in the year. Talks about each of those layers provides additional levels of protection. And that bottom line is interesting. Schools that have not required these measures have seen 2.5 times more outbreaks than those who do. Okay. Health benefits of in-person learning. I know we've been reading about these things. I think, you know, they're obvious as we continue to support kids as best we can, but bringing them back to school, the thoughts about helping to decrease anxiety and depression, lower rates of undetected child abuse and neglect, higher rates of immunizations, and other positive indicators of public health and well-being. State measures that are currently in place. So as you know, and you guys are going to talk about that in a little while, we have our hybrid learning model and the timelines, and it's all linked to safety measures, but those 4 tiers. So he just points out here about the safety guidance that's been helping us work through that initially. Schools can apply for waivers when they're in the purple. We did not do that, but that is an option available to school districts, but we didn't do it. I don't think any public school district in Solano County did that. I think some of the private schools did, if I got that right. Then the bottom one talks about creating school safety plans, posting them online, etc. Thank you. Goes on to say current state supports. Just as a reminder, schools have been given substantial amounts of dollars to buy the protective equipment, cleaning, masks, plastic shields. Average amount, $645,000 per district. Average, half is above, half is below. So an average number. Schools have received also, 2 months, his initial plan from the governor, 2 months of PPE, but he's since realized that that's not enough. Schools need more support around that. Thank you. Now, this is what's different, I think, in what he's proposing. He is emphasizing a few things here. He's emphasizing focusing on the little guys. If you see that first bullet there, starting with elementary, he talks about, phasing it in. That second bullet, while you phase it in with the hope, and I'll tell you what that measurement is, if the data says we can do it, that we have kids back in-person learning by the spring. And then that bottom bullet there, distance learning will remain an option for parents and students. Okay. New state measures that are in place. Elementary schools may reopen if they submit a COVID-19 plan to both the local and state officials, and then the local health department can disapprove or approve within 5 days. Once open, local and state officials will monitor and provide support and reinforcement. That second bullet there is interesting. I would like to point out to the board and the public that this information that is coming in, I'm not making a criticism, but it's voluminous. It changes daily, sometimes by the hour. And I think that's a function of a society doing its level best to try to figure out what is the safest pathway forward and trying to utilize science and look to the emerging data. I say all that in particular context of the last bullet, that if you adopt this new pathway, which focuses on early elementary, he also focuses on the importance of cohorting, which is keeping the same groups of kids, which is much easier to do at the elementary. But he talks about counties must have a 7-day average case rate of less than 28. That number changed today. It's actually 25 per 100,000. So that's an interesting number for the board and the public. If you could see, that's quite different than the numbers that are delineated in the 4 tiers that we've been working with. That number's it's different. Okay. California Safe Schools Plan there's 4 pillars to it: the funding piece, the safety mitigation, the oversight and assistance, and the transparency in communicating out to the public. Thanks. And schools use these funds to implement safety plans. Obviously, if you look at that first bullet, the governor is proposing putting a total of $2 billion towards this effort for public schools, with the desire to see if we can start phasing in at the elementary level, starting in February and in March. The second bullet talks about the importance of having these safety plans in place. And we have our 2 MOUs. We need to wait for the legislature to pass this bill, because there's some other elements in the safety plan that we need to make sure are in ours. Some of them we know that we would need to modify around. Testing is a big one. And there are some others. But look at those dates. I don't think those dates are going to be met. I think those dates were received some criticism regarding the timeline, that if you wanted to do this, you'd have to put your safety plan together, bargain it with your unions, get it approved by the board, and submit it to the county and the health department by February 1st. And if you achieve that goal, you would get $450 per student. If you didn't meet that goal, you could try for March 1st, and you'd get $375.50. It'll be interesting when you watch the news to see if they modify those dates. I think the superintendents throughout the state said those are challenging dates for folks. And it talks about funds will be weighted based on low-income families, English learners, foster youth, and disproportionately impacted. That is the focus for getting those groups of kids support sooner than later. Then it talks about 58% of the students would be supported to get these services paid for through Medicaid, and then continuing to utilize those dollars at the bottom, $1.47 and $5.3 billion to support the effort around safety needs and support materials to have in-person learning. Okay. I won't go into too much on this, but this is the safety and mitigation measures for classrooms. It gives you a delineation of how often you would test. So you can see as you go from yellow, which is the least amount of infection, through purple, you increase the testing more often. So if you take a look at red and purple there, see that? Every 2 weeks, asymptomatic testing. So that is language, for instance, that I believe we would have to modify in the safety MOUs that we've already passed. Okay. Safety mitigation measures for the classrooms. I think we've done a lot of this. All students are required to wear masks. All staff should wear surgical masks. That's different than what I think is in our MOU. Dr. Cush can weigh in later if I'm wrong. Schools will receive more surgical masks from the state at no cost. I was talking to Mr. Romero, our Director of Maintenance and Operation. He says he has been purchasing the surgical mask level for staff, and he's got boxes and boxes of them. He's been very forward-thinking in ordering them. Contact tracing, state contact tracers will be deployed to focus on improving coordination. So that's something we'd have to see what that effort looks like and how we would interface with that. That feels a little bit new. Contact tracing is not new. We have a plan in our safety MOUs, but what they're suggesting there, we want to know more details about that. Vaccines are something everybody is thinking about. And we can, there's 2 trustees that sat in on a session today that can talk about that later if they would like to. That's a big part of this. I think everybody's waiting to see when that would happen. What is the availability? And certainly in the MOUs that we have now, we were not able to put that in there because when we did that, I wasn't sure the vaccine was being distributed at that point. It was still in development. Okay. Hands-on oversight. There's a person there, Dr. Naomi Bardach, and there's elements in there where school districts can get support for working with this effort. And I'm glad that they have that in there. The State Department has developed a website. Dr. Gill might be able to point it out when we get to it later, because I asked her to earlier. It's about a hub, and you could click on it. And it has all of this information in one place, which I think will be very helpful for school districts because it's been information in lots of different places. So the governor's office is trying to be organized about where people go, and they're getting consistent information. So that slides on support for schools. And the last one is, I think this is the last one, transparency, that whatever we do, we make it very transparent to the public. Reopening status, our safety plans, level of available COVID funding, in-school transmissions, a web-based hotline. So all of that, and that's different than what's in our safety MOUs as well. That's good news. I mean, that information should be available to the public in a timely and accurate manner. And California Safe Schools for All plan will help ensure schools can provide safe in-person instruction. So we open it up for discussion or any questions you have based on what we know. And again, this is a pretty down and dirty summary for you. We're still unpacking the details in it, and we have to wait and see if the legislature passes it. So if we can spend a little bit of time just getting your nod or your thoughts about any board direction around it. Do we want to consider working with the unions to explore some options? Because what we could do, if we work, can I see that last bullet? If we work with unions, we can explore some options and see to what degree the elements in this new plan feed or influence whatever we do in the plan that we've already approved. And also we need to talk about the feasibility of submitting plans by the required dates. As I said earlier, I think that those timelines are tough. So I open it up for questions and thoughts. And I think the big thing is just your thoughts, board, about our efforts in reaching out to the union and spend some time exploring what this could or could not mean for the district.
Thank you so much, Dr. Young.
You're welcome. That was a lot. I was like, I was on fast forward. So,
That was. So
go ahead, Diane.
Well, actually, I was just going to ask Mrs. Zeta if we can talk about the information we learned today about the vaccines.
Please.
Because okay. So I think what's really important is the good news is, both Mrs. Zeta and I were on the county email today, and I was very pleased that they've got the teachers in the rank order that we've been asking them to make sure that they do to get the teachers the vaccine. So they are currently opening up that 1B category, which is teachers, essential workers. So the vaccines will be available. They're claiming they will have vaccines for teachers and should be able to get to staff through the month of February. They will need to make sure, from what I understood today, that there are 3 ways that they can access the vaccine. There is the county public health branch that will allow them to access the vaccine. If they're a Kaiser Permanente member, they need to contact their provider, their doctor, and they'll be able to get an appointment that way through the system to get in, or otherwise the Sutter Health. But that was good news to hear. Their big change happened because I think it was Monday afternoon, the federal government, CDC, made the announcement that they were opening up the vaccines to 65 plus other essential workers, which up until Monday was 75 and older. So They've now broadened the band, and they've better explained the vaccines that they have there and what their intent is for. So I think that's really good news. And I think it would, I don't know, I find it a bit of a relief to know that our teachers can have the vaccines and that we can feel that we've added another layer of safety because they can reach out. So I'm kind of happy about that. My concern with the governor's plan, though, is the fact that it hasn't been voted on. And what other criteria are they going to stick in there to be done in short order? I mean, I think that's a question or a piece of information we need to be listening to. And also the 25 to 100,000. I need to understand, are they saying we can't open until we get there?
I think it has to be that number and below.
Okay, so Sherry, today we heard that we are averaging 330 cases per 100,000 right now. So
A lot.
that's where our county or region is, because they were kind of getting muddled between region and county. So just to put that out there.
I listening to all that was said there, it was interesting that the studies, first of all, when we were talking about the call that you guys were on, I know that we discussed the fact that one person said the teachers would get it by February, others by March. It's like the left hand at the county level, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's really doing. So we have to take that, into effect. And for Newsom has gotten a lot of blowback on his studies per se. I mean, if you were to go on and Google yourself, I did today, a Princeton study, Harvard study, WebMD, CNN, all showing that kids can be spreaders also. So there's not a definitive line of science saying, and Ms. Grubbs, I believe you had seen some stuff too, if you want to add in a moment that, oh no, kids aren't spreaders. I think that there is definitely a political component in this with Governor Newsom. I think he's getting political pressure. But the science is not just obviously in one direction. You'll see things on both. Ms. Grubbs, did you want to add anything? Or
I can. I read a number of different studies. One of the more interesting ones was National Geographic on December 10th, 2020, put forth a study that they reviewed. It was a 40,000 person study, and that children under 15 were half as likely to spread the virus to adults. However, they do spread it as compared to adult to adult. Also, in American K-12 schools have reported more than 313,000 COVID cases as of December 10th. One of the other things that I found interesting was an EdSource that was published on the 1st of January this year, was their Los Angeles district testing data showed that about 5% of adults with no symptoms, they were asymptomatic, or exposure, and nearly 10% of children tested positive in that week from January 1st to January 8th or the 7th. And as we all know, the rates in Los Angeles are going up and up. So the latest data means that 1 in 10 kids being tested in schools in Los Angeles have COVID-19. And also, so those are some of the ones that some of the research that I found most interesting. Of course, this is being seen. We have, oops, sorry. Let me come back. So, the COVID is throughout the world. In Germany, schools were open, and they've just been shut down. They're on a serious lockdown. So I think it's just as there's lots of conflicting data. It's really tough, but I think that there is certainly evidence to show that children do spread to adults at about half the rate as adult to adult.
It's still, yeah, they still spread. I mean, and you see the different variants of COVID coming out now that are even more, spreadable. And they look at Britain, they had to lock down too with the schools, and their variant of COVID has been found here in the US too. So I think Newsom, there's that aspect to it, and the science is not definitive in one direction or another. And when you're talking about people's lives, I mean, you wonder why the US and California, why we've had so many more deaths than so many other countries, because we're taking chances and believing what we want to believe instead of, as if the science was just conclusive, which it's not. You can find for every article you find on one side, you can find on the other side. And I guess my question is, do we really want to take a chance with people's lives based on, oh, well, who knows, I could find one thing where you find another.
Well, and even as Mrs. Ferrucci and Ms. Zeta were saying, is that even the experts within our own region don't really go, they're not going hand in hand either.
No, they are not.
They have conflicting data. So it's difficult.
So I'd like to recommend, just throw this out there, just as a reminder, his thought about phase in, start with the little guys, K2, 3, 5, the cohort piece. So I think a lot still has to happen at the legislative level. So I would just suggest that staff and I continue to watch it closely. Let's see what comes out of the legislature. Let's see to what degree the elements of the plan that passes influences what we wind up doing going forward. I mean, it could wind up being its own pathway, or it could shape, what we've already approved. Does that make sense to the board?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what else we can do other than let's explore, let's engage the union, let's have some conversations, and see what are there any possibilities for us in what is coming out of it. And then we'll come back. We'll come back and report at the board level.
I think it's important that we do plan ahead at this point, that staff have everything in place with the vaccine, hopefully rolling out.
Yeah.
Though it sound very hopeful today, but with the vaccine rolling out, maybe, we can get moving and back into schools as soon as we can. So it'll be important going forward to have everything in place.
Dr. Gill, not to put you on the spot, if you don't have the answer, that's perfectly okay. Did you happen to find the website for that's called the Hub?
Yes, Dr. Young, it's called California COVID-19 Response Hub.
California COVID-19 Response Hub. I think they launched it very recently, with this week, and I went on it, and it's a pretty good website. It's an organized place where they're trying to put all the information for school districts. Okay, more to come on this. So
Well,
okay.
I think I just wanted to add to Mrs. Zeta, one of the things they did say today, that we saw the big surge in numbers, and they said it was because of the holidays. They're feeling the surge this week is because of the New Year holiday. So one of the things that they were very positive about was that they felt that we should begin to see the decline that they've anticipated seeing in the cases, because we are now past those big points that they were talking about. So I think with that in mind, if the numbers in fact are dropping and the vaccines are rolling out as they should be, I agree with you, Cece. I think we need to start planning ahead and start getting ready, just kind of getting ourselves set. I'm interested to see how the governor's plan rolls out. I think the piece of it I like is getting the little kids in there first, but I think we should pursue it. Let's start, get the information for us.
Well, we can only hope to see better numbers and everybody wear their mask and do what they need to do to be safe. because we, as a board, and I know our teachers feel the same way, we want the kids to be back in school. And it is very hard to go through this. And I think one thing that we did have was that with the meeting today, that we kind of got pushed back down as far as the teachers and educators getting the vaccine, because they added in the 65 and 65 and over, and that just kind of pushed us down one level. So we're going to get there, and let's just hope for the best. Okay, thank you, Dr. Young.
Welcome.
I appreciate it.
Sure.
We're going to move on to number 13, non-consent action items. And our first item is 13.1, the implementation timeline for reopening of schools plan for in-person hybrid learning. I'm sure we have a lot of people watching, and we welcome you to be part of this. And I want to turn this, I guess, over to Dr. Young.
Thank you. Ms. Martinez, do you have that presentation that was attached to the board agenda? No?
I have, oops. I don't think we attached anything, Dr. Young, but I have the last one where the teams came and presented what the plan would be. If you would
Oh,
like
no, mine was just 3 slides.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That was attached to the agenda. Okay, that'd be great. And then Leslie, could you, Dr. Beaton, you could pull it up.
I don't think I have that one.
Okay.
Okay, as she's doing that, I mean, I could take us through this. So tonight, you guys, as a board, are going to spend some time having a discussion, thinking again about the decision that the motion that you passed a couple of board meetings ago. And before I, rephrase that, just to remind everybody that I was talking about it earlier, that we passed those safety MOUs for the classified and certificated staff early on in the year, just as a reminder that those are in place. And we've been going through this process, doing our level best, working with the unions and putting together this hybrid plan, lots of input, tons of great discussion at the board. So just a reminder of where we've been. And then you voted on it. We had a motion where the motion was we would do one-on-one and small group instruction in purple. And that would just be if teachers volunteered to do it. And then we would implement the hybrid learning plan, which we presented in detail. Dr. Beatson did a few times for K-12 if we were in red. So that's where we landed.
2 weeks.
That's right. You have to be in red for 2 weeks, then you could implement it. So it was really those two pieces: what we said we'd do in purple and what we said we'd do in red. We moved away from picking a date, which I think was smart, because it's hard to pick a date with this, because we were move forward with the data. So tonight, you're going to have a conversation about, do we move ahead with that? Do we reconsider that? And that's your task. That's what this action item is.
Did you want us to go forward and start discussion on this, Dr.
Yes,
Young?
I apologize for the presentation.
That's
but
okay.
It was 2 slides, and I just articulated it. So.
That's okay. No worries. So at this time, I'd like to open up discussion on the implementation timeline for reopening of school plan for in-person hybrid learning. And personally, I just want everybody to know that we are all struggling with making these decisions. It is not easy. It really is difficult to make decisions to make sure that everybody is well taken care of. And I appreciate all the families out there that have worked so hard with their students, and the teachers that have worked so hard putting together virtual education pieces together. This is just not an easy time. But with that said, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for some discussion. Would anybody like to start?
Yeah, I'd like to start. I think I have a unique position, not only being married to a teacher, but being a teacher myself. This is my 27th year, and I have friends throughout the state. And one of the things that I've seen is that districts who, when we were all out in spring, the numbers were better, districts were starting to go back and their numbers spiked. And you have to ask yourself, has Benicia been so great? Have our numbers been so good? Because we have stayed out and we have played it safe. You know, that's something to look at. And the thing people make the comparison of going into a store. Well, if you go into a store, you're hypocritical if you don't open schools. In a store, you have contact with a person for maybe 1 minute at the most. In a school, you are in a classroom. If you're elementary, you're there for, 4 hours or whatever. In hybrid, 3 hours. And secondary is there for 1 hour with, multiple changes in terms of the kids. And as I said earlier, you have the new strains of the virus coming in. If this was not an issue, people would not be dying. You would not see teachers dying. If you look it up, there's, hundreds of teachers dying, even in California, thousands across the country in places where it's opened up. And I think that, we have to be safe on that. My feeling, and when we're done, I'm going to make the motion that we look at the vaccines as the key, getting all school staff vaccinated. My district where I work in Pittsburgh made this decision in December to wait until the end of the third quarter, March 12th, with the hope that teachers would be vaccinated by then. That is in Contra Costa County. The third quarter here in Benicia ends on March 19th. My suggestion is that we would make that a date, because that's also a really good date because it's an end date. And as a teacher myself, I could tell you, teaching distance learning is entirely different than teaching in person. And there needs to be time for a change, for a switch from one to the other. And I think that using that date and saying, okay, this is what we're going to look at. And, as we get into February, we look at the data and see if we're getting to the point and plan for that date. Now, as the discussions were back in November, if things go exactly as we thought they would, where numbers spiked, we might have to look. But the key is, if the school staff is vaccinated, it takes care of a lot of these issues in terms of red and purple and everything else. And I think that is a solid way to go. So at the end here, I am going to make that motion. Obviously, we have to have discussion first. Yep. And I understand that it could be voted down, and I accept that. But because of all these reasons, I think it would be prudent for us to look at doing that, waiting until the end of the third quarter and shoot for the beginning of the fourth quarter, be back if, the numbers align. And with that, we can do all our pre-planning and be ready. Thank you for giving me that time.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then I just wanted to say, for me, it is definitely a difficult, as you said, Ms. Zeta, it is a difficult decision to make, and we definitely want to do the right thing for, for all of our students. But health and safety is absolutely important, and I realize that for some, for whatever reasons, we all have our own views, but the bottom line is that health and safety is a key factor. I've read different reports over time. We have more data now than we did back in March. And so all of kids aren't spreading, I know that that's not true, because I've read other reports as well. So I know that we still have to be considerate of those things. But I am happy. I mean, I do feel like I see a little bit of hope, because now the vaccinations are, they feel like it's more accessible. Mm-hmm. Like we're getting close to being able to have that as an option. And I would feel safer knowing that our staff would, be able to get vaccinations even, in a timely manner, because it appears that if it's going to be in February, that would be awesome. And so at least I know that we have some time frame, hopefully, even if it's like the beginning of March, but at least we know that they're on the way. And I know that, folks will have to work with their healthcare providers and things like that. And so I feel a little bit better about that. I do like what you said, Mr. Maselli, about at least, if we can look at a date, because I know that for our families, it's like, okay, when is it going to be? What's the date? was it going to be in December? Was it going to be in January? And so to at least now have, to kind of feel like it's more tangible now. And like I said, because of the vaccinations, I do feel a little bit better about that. So I would like to have some time, more of a concrete time that we can have in place and say, boom, this is, where it's going to be. We know if we have the vaccinations, that it should be better. I do have a concern about the strands, because those strands have been spiraling, and I know that there's still stuff that we just don't even know. We don't even know yet. And so, so that's kind of where I am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Moss. Anybody else? Mrs. Ferrucci?
Well, I've been very vocal about this all along, right? So obviously, Mrs. Ferrucci is not short on a conversation again. All right, Mark, no laughing at me. I actually do want the kids to get back to school. You know that I have not been hiding that. I've been very upfront about that. One of the things I will say is I really like the idea of picking a date. I like the idea of giving parents a target. And this is why. That when we voted, we said when we hit the red, we have to stay in red for 2 weeks, and then we could pick a date to start school, which is keeping everybody on, okay, I need to make plans with my job. I need to do this. I need to do that. So if we're not, when are we pulling the trigger on opening the doors? I liked when we made the review, when it was coming up to the end of the first quarter in October, because I thought, okay, I was praying that we could have opened the schools then. But I really would appreciate giving families a date and saying, okay, third quarter, it's clean to do it at a quarter. The same argument that we picked for October 14th or whatever the October date was for the same reason. It was clean. You're finished with one, you're moving on to the next segment. And that makes so much more sense for everybody, kids and teachers. So I would like to say we're going to shoot here. It's a good time of the year to be opening. I know it's only the last few months of school, but those last few months of school are so powerful for connecting together, connecting with your friends. There's so much that goes on at the end of the school year. To know that they were going to lose it again this year like they did last year was really heartbreaking, to know that you have to tell kids again, sorry, you don't get that closure with your teacher, with your classmates again. So, I would say let's pick a date and let's say this is our target date. And then whatever the district personnel needs to do to figure out if we could work into and get some extra support from the governor with this plan once they decide what all the hoops are. Great, if it all worked together.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Ferrucci. And Mrs. Grubbs.
I would just like to weigh in and support the idea of having a date to go back in order for everyone to plan. If we're going back in a hybrid model, everything has changed because of the vaccine. So, but transportation, planning for parents is so important, as well as for the teachers, and getting back into the classroom, being able to do their planning, have everything that they need, and bringing the kids in. They'll need to make sure that they have all the PPE that is required going forward. How are they working with the kids? Do they, there will be questions that come up, which is why it's so important that we look at those steps way ahead of time, so that parents and staff are prepared and understand exactly what these next steps are. So I really look forward to hearing about those plans, and I really look forward to having everyone back in school. We all want our kids back in school. But we all want everyone to remain safe as well. This is a very tough time. And those poor kids, they need to be back in school. They need to be safe, and staff needs to be safe.
Thank you so so much, Mrs. Grubbs. I actually feel like I see a light at the end of this dark tunnel. Finally, I'm relieved that the vaccinations are coming. I know that from what I've heard and read that they're not coming as fast as we need them, and things keep getting juggled around, but I do know that they are coming, and hopefully we will be able to offer all our staff an opportunity to get these vaccinations. And remember that in some of those vaccinations, there's 2 vaccinations you have to get to be
They
completely.
both are a double shot.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're both a double shot within 3 weeks of each other. So there's a stretch of time that we're going to have to wait. But I think if we can get teachers and staff vaccinated, I will breathe a whole sigh of relief, because then we can deal. It'll be different problems, but I think we can work with that. We never wanted it to go this long. Who would have thought from last March that we would still be out of school? Really, it's just unbelievable.
Ms. Zeta, I
Yep.
wanted to point out real quick that depending where the legislature lands on those dates, we could wind up having an opportunity where if it would, with your motion there, that if it lines up with the March dates, and if we're able to get some kind of a plan submitted, it might sort of line up and we could wind up getting access to that money. It wouldn't be 450, it would be like 375, 50. I just wanted to throw that out there that
And the 50
might be an
cents.
option. And I know.
Don't forget the 50 cents.
We're talking, here's a $2 billion allocation and then a 50, so.
That would
I
be
just-
ideal.
Yeah,
That would be
all right.
ideal, if that could happen. I'm not looking at it in sense of the money
Right.
necessarily, though. I'm
Right.
looking at safety. I have to put what's paramount first.
I totally agree with that. I'm just saying that if it lined up and the winds of fortune blew in our direction and it lined up with the safety piece and we was like a win-win and then we had access to money, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Diane.
Well, I'm just curious, Charles, you had mentioned in the plan, he said surgical masks. Are we talking the N95s?
I
Probably.
believe
That's what I'm
so.
wondering.
And when I talked to Mr. Romero, he said he has been ordering that level of mask for teachers.
That's great.
That
I was
is
just
great.
wondering if that's what we're talking about, if that's what he's referring to.
They're the ones without the valves, from what I
Right.
understand.
Even if I was reading today on that website that Dr. Gill mentioned that, and it's a whole section in there about vaccines. It's really nice, informative, that even if you get the vaccine, it keeps you from getting sick. And
Right.
Mr. Mincelli and I talked about this earlier in the week, that it doesn't necessarily keep you from
Spreading it. Yeah.
spreading it. So you have to still wear the mask, apparently.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that's not going to end when we go back. I
No.
mean, there'll still be the issue with the mask.
This
but
is safe. The safety.
we'll
Safety.
be in a better position once we get the vaccinations done to our staff.
That's right.
Dr.
So
Gill.
Yeah, Dr. Gill. Yes, I'm sorry. Hi.
Wanted to clarify, surgical masks are not N95s.
Okay.
They are the masks that,
The
I
blue
have them
ones?
on my screen. I can quickly show them to you right now.
Oh, they're a higher level, Dr. Gill?
No, they're not. They're these kind of masks. These are called surgical masks.
Oh, that's
Oh,
what I
yeah.
thought, the blue ones. Yeah. Okay.
I got boxes of those too.
I got a whole mess of those. Yeah.
So thank you for showing us. I appreciate that. I want to make sure that we are super clear in how we make this so that we don't have any issues with, I don't want to have to revisit this like we are now because things have changed. But I want to be sure that each of us is clear when the motion's put out and then we reread it, that we're clear. I want to be really, really clear in our thought process as we're putting it out for a motion. So is there any other discussion before we move into that section? Okay, so we will move on. So
Okay.
do we have a motion?
I move that we remain in remote learning or distance learning through March 19th, which is the last day of the third quarter, with the desire to begin in-person learning for the beginning of the fourth quarter, which would be the 22nd of March. State permitting, state rules permitting.
Okay. Do I have a second? Okay, thank you. Thank you. We got 2 seconds. That's awesome. So what I'd like to do is have someone reread it in its entirety, and then we vote on it, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so does Georgina do that? Is she the one that would read that, what we just said? I want to, want to make sure.
Yeah, you can do it, or Georgina can do it.
Yeah. Okay, the motion was to remain in distance learning through March 19th with the desire to return to in-person learning on March 22nd, which is the first day of the fourth quarter, state rules permitting.
Right.
Okay.
And that state rules permitting's got to be in there. That's important.
Okay. So we have a first, and we have a second, correct? So that being said, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none and hearing none, the motion passes. And I really truly hope this puts some of our parents to some at ease regarding the future with kids in the future getting back to school. So with that in mind, we're going to move on to item number 13.2, which is the consideration and approval of resolution number 20-21-22 of Benicia Unified School District awarding the online student information system contract pursuant to Public Contract Code section 20118.2. And with that, I'm going to welcome Mr. Padawan and Miss Stephanie Rice. I appreciate you guys hanging out for so long. This has been a long meeting. So I guess, Mr. Padawan, we welcome you and ready for you to share.
Thank you, President Zara. Thank you, board, and Dr. Young. Thank you for having us back here, and we are very excited to present this recommendation that with all the work that we did for the past couple of months, it is a very big pleasure to come here and present it. So why we're here, we want to remind you why we're here. We want to, for you to understand the process that we follow to achieve this point. And we're going to show you some highlights of the recommended system. And we're going to seek for a recommendation for the approval of the contract. As you remember, on November 7th, we came and asked for permission to go out for a bid for our SIS, the Student Information System. We have currently using Power School for the last 17 years. We are the only district in Solano County using this SIS. Power School has very inconsistent performance and data. The customer support was inadequate for our staff and students. The system lack of a lot of capabilities. We have a lot of frustrated users, starting from the school office managers to the district office. And for example, for the online enrollment for the last 2 years, we did not have a clear data coming from their system. That made a double contacts and very inconsistent data for our students. So calling back families was very challenging. And also we went with the performance matter that was one of the products that they purchased with the promise that was a great addition for us. And again, for the last 2 years, we tried to make it work, but we were not successful. And not because we lacked on our part, because we worked a lot of people hours to make this happen and did not happen. So here's the process that we follow. After the November 7th board meeting, we went out for bid and we put our RFP on our website for 28 days, also on the newspaper. We had 3 RSP coming back, and we moved forward with 2 of them. We interviewed them for a 2 hours slot with 24 members. And part of these members were elementary, middle, and high school teachers, special education staff, psychologists, office managers, administrators from all levels, health services, student services, technology, education services, business, and CDU. As you see, we had the entire department and the entire schools represented on these 24 members panel. We interviewed the 2 companies, and the team voted to move forward Aries. And here we are presenting to the board the motion. And also, after those 2 days, we called back Aries, the 4 of us, Dr. Bitson, Mr. Rahil, Ms. Rice, and myself, and we went and we asked other questions that came up with the 24 members, and we were very satisfied from the answers. I also called around other districts, and they were very impressed with Aries, and they say that they're the best SIS in California. And I want to thank our team. As you see all the names here, I'm not going to stay here and read every single one, but we are very, very thankful for them to come and spend their time for improving our SIS for student and staff. I want to now I'm going to pass the ball to Ms. Rice. She's going to highlight the rest.
All right, thank you. So as Mr. Padawan shared, we looked at several components of the systems. And when we debriefed with our team, we came up with several highlights from Aries. Can you go back one slide, please, Mr. Padawan? Thank you. As he pointed out, it is supported throughout California and strongly also supported in Solano County. This is really important to us as they already have the California Common Core state standards integrated into its system. Our current system does not, and that's something we as a district had to load ourselves. Also, they have a very clear implementation plan and timeline. They assure us that we'll be ready to go for next year. They have a clear system of how this happens and how they'll support the professional learning for all the different components in our district. Aries also has a mobile platform, both for our families and for our teachers. And as we looked at the different platforms, they were very well organized, very visually pleasing. Speaking on the teacher's end and on the administrator's end, you could manipulate it to where you could have as much as you wanted viewing and as little as you wanted, and that was really important to our users. Another piece that was exciting to see is it's Google compatible. So we use Google Classroom to assign our assignments to our students, especially now in virtual learning. And the teachers within that system grade assignments. And then currently they have to go into PowerSchool, into the gradebook, and re-enter the scores. Here, they can be directly imported into our Aries system, so it's not a double job for our teachers. Also, we dug into the scheduling features. This really affects secondary in creating those master schedules, and Aries was really open to already supporting our district if we move forward in this, in preparing our administrators in this feature. And then we also looked into the integration features. So we had representatives from, our food services and our health and the systems they use currently, NutriKids, CareDocs, etc., all integrate with Aries, meaning that it's more of a seamless process, not a clunky process, as I would say. And then the assessment platform that we are looking into utilizing next year, NWEA MAP, it also integrates with Aries. And a comment from one of the members on our team who came from a district that used Aries prior to Benicia, she also used NWEA MAP, and she thought that testing system was a product of Aries, not a separate system, because of the ease of use through their Aries system. So that was really exciting for the team to hear and see. So with that, those are just a few highlights from this really large system. So we come to you today with the recommendation to move forward as a board to approve the contract with Aries to be the Benicia Unified School District's student information system. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Padawan and Ms. Rice. I appreciate all the effort you've gone into to check the different things that were available to our district and to find something that is going to be making it a lot easier for our staff. It's really important to lessen the workload that they have on their shoulders, and it sounds like this is going to be a great opportunity for everybody. So thank you for bringing it to us. So at this time, I want to find out if we have an approval of resolution 20-21-22 regarding the Aries contract, the student information system contract. Do I have a first?
Well, before we do that, I want to say, being in Pittsburgh, I've been using Aries for 16 years, and it is seamless. The grade program is great. The Google Classroom, which I started using this year in the remote learning, it's best to do one assignment at a time, moving it from Google Classroom into Aries. As long as you do that, it does move seamlessly. You don't have to re-enter grades twice. The website is good. The homepage, we do our attendance, everything else. I could not speak more highly of Aries. It's great. So I just wanted to add that in from personal, usage for a lot of years.
Awesome, Mr. Maselli. Does anybody else have any comments? Dr. Moss?
I was going to say I did that. I've been using Aries for a good 15 plus years, and it's definitely a great system. And then with as Mr. Maselli was saying, the Google Classroom connection makes it just so much doable. So good.
Oh, awesome. Mrs. Ferrucci, anything?
You know what? I'm just going to echo Ms. Moss and Mr. Maselli, because I actually used it in my previous position, and it was a great program.
Yeah.
And I've worked with the NWEA, so we pulled them all together, and it was a great piece. And if they still have the notes section too, I don't know.
They do. Yeah.
They do. There you go. That was also a really invaluable piece. So I think it's a great choice.
Oh, fantastic.
And we'll have local people that we could call back onto as well. So I'm sure that was part of the connection.
Oh,
so
that's
I'd
great.
say bravo, guys.
Yeah, that's good. Mrs. Grubbs, did you have anything to add? No? No, she's not familiar with it, I don't think.
Miss Gill or Dr. Gill?
Oh, Dr. Gill.
But I will say that I'm happy to see Power School go.
Okay, good. Dr. Gill.
Well, there you go.
I put back everybody else's voice, because I used Aries as a teacher, as a parent, and as an administrator for 25 years almost. Power School is
great.
So it was amazing every single time. Even as a parent, I loved it.
Fantastic. I think we're moving in the right direction. Seamless, right? All right. So at this time, I would like to find out if we have, if there's a motion on the table for approval of resolution number 20-21-22 of Benicia Unified School District awarding the online student information system contract pursuant to the Public Contract Code section 2118.2. Do I have a first?
Go ahead.
Motion? I'm sorry, go ahead,
Make
make the motion.
I move that we approve Aries as the new student information system for Benicia.
Thank
I'll
you.
second it.
Thank you. This is a roll call vote, so
Right.
I guess, yeah. Yes.
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 That is awesome. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. And it looks like we've reached the end of our very long evening together as a board. I appreciate everybody's time and effort and all that we do every day. And I think we can adjourn our meeting. So with that being said, here's my trusty shell. We're going to adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Have a good night.
Have a good one.
Right.
Bye.